Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Best and Worst of Walt Disney World. I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined at the table this week by my good friends, Mr. Sean Falk and Mr. Steve Porter.
Hello.
And back in the production nook, but with no camera on him, our producer, Mr. Craig Williams. All right, so doing something a little different this week. A few weeks back, we did a poll for the Best and Worst resort pools. And as we do with as what happens with every poll we do that involves a resort, the All-Stars end up coming up dead last. And that poll was absolutely no exception. So on that show, I put out a call to folks saying, if you stay at the All-Star, tell us why. If you love the All-Star, tell us why, because we keep seeing it come up on the worst list, whether it's, for pools or food courts or you name it. Every poll we do, and this isn't about our personal opinion per se, but about the reaction we get from our audience on Facebook. Always no love for the All-Stars. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine our surprise when I put that call out and that show went up, and we were inundated.
Overwhelmed with it.
With emails from people who love the All-Star. So we thought what we'd do is kind of a little follow-up show and talk about some of the responses that we got. Now, the vast majority of these responses kind of all said the same thing. It's great for people on a budget. Mm-hmm. We saw a lot of people say that, we spend most of our day in the parks, and then
it's just a bed.
Just a bed, place to sleep, come back for a midday break. But I've asked Steve to go ahead and curate through some of those emails and mention some of the things that people were talking about.
So I pulled through a couple of the emails, skimmed, and tried to find some little quotes or paragraphs that kind of encapsulated an interesting point that someone made. So the first one, you kind of actually, Ariel, mentioned something you just touched on, just that it's just a place to sleep. So I'll kind of move on from there. Nico says that it's his place to ignore the real world for a while without paying the price of staying at a moderate or deluxe. So comparatively to off-site hotel for the similar price as a value, he gets to stay in that Disney bubble.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good point.
For him, that's why it's worth it. So, and he also mentioned, which I thought was a good point, is a lot of people will knock the value resorts for having so many kids running around and it being a little overwhelming. And he says, in his experience, he's had really kind of seen horrible kids and had obnoxious kids running around at Grand Floridian or the Polynesian. True. So for him, he says, hey, if I'm going to have kind of kids everywhere, it's Disney, I might as well just pay the cheapest price and stay where I want to stay.
Mm-hmm. And, it's a very good point that, for the price point, let's say, depending time of year, things like that, what kind of room you're getting, about anywhere between $100 and $140 a night on average to stay at the All-Star. So for the same price that you would stay off-site, you do get the perks. You get the Disney transportation, you get the extra magic hours, stuff like that go along with staying on site. Plus, you're in that Disney bubble.
Not driving on I-4, not worrying about renting a car, like you said.
Even just still getting to get picked up at the airport still is such a big thing. I mean, now we do, the Orlando airport recently started letting you get picked up by Uber without having to do like Uber X or Uber Black or whatever. So even that, like now you don't have to do those, but before that it was $60 pretty much to get, because I get picked up from the airport to get an Uber or whatever, it's about $50 or $60, and I live right by Disney, so even that saves money coming back. That's a whole night stay at $100, like for the driving in a cab or whatever. So
right,
that's a good point. So the next one is from Chris C. And he says that the All-Star remind him of his Disney trips as a kid because that's where his family always stayed.
Heard this a lot.
So he has a nostalgic thing where, there's things that probably annoy him about, maybe the food courts aren't the best, or there's little things that maybe bug him. But for him, that's what a Disney vacation is. And so I totally understand that, because for me, anything that I feel nostalgic about, like the People Mover is a good attraction. I think it's the best attraction ever because I'm nostalgic about memories that I've had on the People Mover. So I think he probably feels that way about these resorts, which I totally get because that's a huge thing about Disney fandom.
Well, I think we all have that with
Yeah.
particular resorts that.
I mean, yeah, even particularly for me with the All-Star resorts, I mean, that was where I went with my family and stuff. And like one particular time, my mom like wanted to get like sunscreen or toothpaste or whatever it was she wanted. And she used the word sundries and was asking if there was like a sundries place. And I just died laughing because I thought it was like the most weird term. I had never heard the term before. And I just thought it was hilarious. I thought it was like a very like old-timey sound, and I was like laughing really hard because it sounded so outdated. And she's like, it's sundries, it's called sundries, that's just what they're called. And I'm like, they can't be called that, like that's not what they're called. And so we went to the lobby in All-Star Sports, and literally Goofy Sundries is the name of the store. And I was like, this just can't be a thing. So now anytime I see a product like that, I'm like, oh, sundries, like that's what those are.
That's
and
what
it
they're
takes
called,
me back to staying at the All-Star Resort and all that. So anytime I go in that resort, I think of that, think of my mom, like that kind of stuff. So everyone has their little memory things.
And although not as a child, as an adult, because I didn't start coming to Disney until I was an adult, I remember, I think it was my second or third trip to Disney World. This was even before I met John. A friend of mine and I stayed at All-Star, I want to say it was All-Star Music that we stayed at. And that's where we were staying. We were there for almost 2 weeks too, like 10 or 11 days. It was like a big deal. We were staying for that long, and we that was the first time I ever saw a space shuttle launch. We were staying there, and we drove out to
That's cool.
Cape Canaveral at night to watch. It was a night launch. I forgot which shuttle it was, but it was incredible. It was such an amazing experience.
Hashtag amazing experience.
And so, and again, neither one of us could afford anything crazy. We drove down. It's my only time ever doing that, the last time I will ever do it. But we drove down to Orlando. And so, I have very fond memories of that. So the nostalgia piece I completely get, and we've heard that from a number of people. Stayed there as a kid, and now that they're an adult, family of their own, there is that kind of nostalgic connection.
Yeah, so when I saw nostalgia, I was like, oh, I got to read more on that. So that was a great one. This is from Lisa, and she makes the point that staying at the Value Resort allows them to save money, obviously, but more importantly, it then allows them to use the money that they saved to spend on other things. So, I mean, a lot of people had mentioned saving money, but I liked that twist on it, that like, now we have more money in the budget to do, Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party that we would have otherwise not been able to afford. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, we can we can try a signature dining restaurant that we wouldn't have been able to do if we stayed at the moderates. And so I can appreciate that because I think that when you try those things that maybe cost a little bit more, your entire vacation is, so much better. And trying those, things that are a little bit above the budget and maybe would have, pushed people in ways that they wouldn't have felt comfortable with spending that money if they had stayed at the moderate or deluxe. So
I agree.
I like that one.
Good.
And then let's move on. I had never experienced this, but maybe you guys have. They were saying that the bus service there's a faster rotation at the All-Stars. I didn't know that, but
I mean, I've stayed there several times, especially if you stay at All-Star Sports, because they get picked up first and dropped off first, or they get picked up last, dropped off first. Is like, it's some weird way that I remember them doing it. So that's why we always picked sports, was because you were guaranteed a spot on the bus because it was like an empty bus line, that kind of thing. And then you got dropped off at the beginning. So after a long day, you're like, oh, thank God, like I'm the first one off this bus. And I think there are more buses that go there because they're more individualized and because they're so packed. I definitely notice more All-Star buses that say like All-Star Resorts on them. So there probably is, a quicker turnover on getting.
Yeah, less waiting.
I think the thing would be the return from the parks, because like when you're there getting to the parks, you're in your own like All-Star Sports line or wherever. But like coming back, a lot of the time you can get on any of them and come back. So and they're all right there in the same thing. So.
Very cool. And then this point, I'll actually mention a couple people had the same idea, so I'll talk about it a little bit. But Heather says that she loves the theming is fantastic for her family, the bright colors, the over the top decorations, the giant characters, because for them and her family, the non-value resorts feel too fancy. They don't feel Disney-esque to her. So when she's at Wilderness Lodge or the Polynesian or the Contemporary, they are Disney park related, but they're not Disney movie related. And so she likes having those Disney characters. And I think it might be the same Heather or a different Heather makes the point that she has a son that has autism, and that seeing the giant big Disney characters is like a lot of stimulus that is, more consistent and bright colors and stuff like that. And so I can't speak from that perspective, but I could totally understand what she's saying, that maybe that works for her and her family. So
I mean if you think about it, none of the hotels beyond the value have anything to do specifically with Disney necessarily. I mean, you could pick them up, like I could take Port Orleans Riverside and put it anywhere else in the country, and it's not necessarily a Disney related resort or hotel or anything. So whereas all the value resorts, I mean, with the exception, I guess Pop Century really doesn't, but, even like Art of Animation.
All-Star Sports really.
All-Star Sports. And I actually was going to say that might be the reason why All-Star Sports does even a little bit lower than the other two in our rankings a lot, because at least All-Star Music is heavily Disney music themed, Disney movie themed, and then sports is like a big football. So, or whatever. So it really doesn't have anything to do with Disney as well. So given the options,
All-Star Music isn't really Disney music themed.
It's not,
it's just,
but there's at least like a couple
Art of Animation, and All-Star Movies really, I think, capture the real they use Disney intellectual property in those, where the rest of them don't. So I can understand the affinity towards that.
There's a little bit of Disney characters in sports. I know like the baseball pool has not Donald Duck.
Is it Goofy there?
No, it's the nephews.
Huey, Dewey,
yes.
and Louie. Okay.
Sorry, I was blanking on their names. So there are little Disney touches, but yeah, I think the movies are probably movies and animation. But all right, let me see. They're just saying that what we do. This is Chris S. says that we are now kind of judging them against stuff like the Grand Floridian or the Contemporary.
No, I'm not.
Okay, well that was his point. And
no,
he says
I'm not. First of all, I would never judge the All-Stars against the Grand Floridian. Okay, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. I understand the difference between a deluxe resort, a moderate, and a value. I'm judging it against... I'm not really judging it because I haven't stayed at the All-Stars in a while. Something I will be doing, because a lot of you have commented you want to see me do a review of the All-Stars. I will be staying at All-Star Movies in January. We will put a review up sometime in early February, early to mid-February, depending on our recording schedule. But so I'm not really judging it at all. This is all being sparked by what we're seeing from the poll results that we've been doing on Facebook. So this is not necessarily that, I can't stand the All-Stars. It's not by any means my go-to when I'm staying on property, which is why I haven't stayed there in years. But this is what, we're seeing from a lot of people, which is why I put the call out in the first place. So what exactly did he say?
He just said, so off of that, comparing the Grand Floridian, the Contemporary Boardwalk, etc., is like saying you can't compare fine dining compared to Applebee's and think that they're going to be at the same level.
Okay, I want to know. What's this guy's name?
Chris S.
Chris, when did I ever say they were? When did I ever say that the value resorts should be compared to the deluxes? It's insane. Never said it. Move on.
So he just, I'll just finish out a sentence. He just said, "Let's give a little bit more love and support to the values and stop belittling the people that are fans of the All-Stars."
Haven't belittled anybody. Haven't belittled anybody.
I mean, I know for me with like picking the stuff, I don't directly compare them as a thing. I just talk about stuff in the encompassment, because there's nothing wrong with the All-Star resorts. Like, I mean, if it was just a resort to stay at, like, it's an actual resort. It has giant like footballs and characters and big pools and all that kind of stuff. Like, you're not going to find that at most other hotels or resorts or whatever in the area, period. Mine has always just been critiques of it, for me, was comparing it to what you can get from other hotels on Disney property, because I just have always, so I think I've always thought about it the opposite way of like, well, I can't compare it to like off-property stuff. Like, I can't compare it to Motel 6 or anything, because that's like also not a fair comparison too, because it's on property.
Not.
So I get what you're saying, and I get kind of what the guy is saying. Right?
Well,
so,
but that can be turned around too.
Yeah.
Don't judge people who prefer the amenities that go along with staying at deluxe resorts, because that's what they prefer. Nobody's looking down. I'm not. Nobody here at this table is looking down their nose at anybody that stays at All-Star. I mean, I've stayed at All-Star. Plenty of friends have stayed at All-Star. My family has stayed at All-Star. I don't look down my nose at anybody for that. But by the same token, don't assume that people who prefer to stay at deluxe resorts are somehow elitist. Just, that's what I like. I prefer the amenities and the atmosphere that goes along with staying at the Polynesian, the Animal Kingdom Lodge, the Contemporary, not the Grand Floridian. It's not my cup of tea. I don't like, it's too stuffy for me.
oh, it is, yeah.
It's beautiful, and it is Disney's flagship resort, and people love it, and I get it, but it's just not for me. So, all right, enough of that.
Okay.
Next.
This person kind of mentioned something similar that you had mentioned earlier, and that you're not from the UK, but they were saying they stay for 2 weeks when they come because they're from the UK. And so that affords them to be able to stay longer, because of traveling internationally, it's so expensive that, it's only really worth it for their family to stay really long periods of time.
And just even talking about the domestic market, I think that oftentimes the prices at the All-Stars are the difference between a 4-day or a 4-night Disney vacation and maybe a 6 or 7-night Disney vacation.
So that was from Abi, I believe is his name. So, yeah, and I think that's a very valid point. I have a friend that I did the college program with, and he's from Australia, and he was saying, yeah, I always stay at the All-Star Sports, because this way I can come every year, and I can come every year for, 14 days rather than, every other year for 6 days or something, a really short trip, because flights are so expensive. So makes a lot of sense. And then Robert says the value resorts are a great day to arrive or depart, because you're not going to be just for a place to sleep, and it's a way for them to save money, because they're just using it as the bed, and they're not really that night that they arrive, and they're just going to go right to sleep, so it doesn't really matter for them. And then he also mentions that it's good for people that are here for special events like Run Disney or different special events, that they're just here for that event, and they're not really here for the resort amenities or anything else.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think though what we saw with the variety of comments that we got back is that you have some people that will use it as what's referred to as the shoulder stay. The first day or the last day of your vacation is referred to when you're staying at another resort and then moving, a shoulder stay. People that it's just a place to sleep, but then you have people that are, I love the theming, I love being immersed in the Disney characters and the Disney IP. You talk about the perks of instead of staying off site, I'm getting all the perks that go along with being an on-site guest, including transportation and things like that. So and of course, in addition to the money you save. Mm-hmm. So, there are people who use it all different ways. But, what's interesting to me is that, like I said, on our polls, it's, like I said, with every poll we do, if the All-Stars are on the list, they come up last.
Last, yeah.
Yet
consistent.
We put this call out and we get this incredible response back. So, and there was no hate in these emails.
Yeah.
that people were
Oh, yeah.
sending.
No, they were
It
all
was
very positive,
and
yeah.
it's not, and a lot of them were love. I love the All-Stars. It wasn't just, well, it's a place to sleep. There was a lot of passion in these emails. That's why I'm like, okay, we need to like record, because when I put the call out there, it was just like, we're seeing this negativity. So the people that love it, please tell me what you love about it. And so not only have I been enlightened on some of that, but the sheer number of people that responded. I've been doing this a long time, so I can tell when, it's a one-off and when there's really a lot there. There's a lot there with this.
I thought the point that you brought up before the show, you should bring up again because I think it was a good point. I must have missed that email.
Yeah, no, I don't remember where it was, but God, y'all sent so many emails. I spent like 2 days reading through these things. One of them, somebody wrote in and was talking about the actual like energy and atmosphere of the other guests when they arrive to the All-Star value resorts and everything, and I actually agreed. I mean, when you go, people are there, they're so excited to be at Disney, they're just thrilled to have the opportunity to get there, whereas somewhere else like the Grand Floridian, which I'm with Pete on that, it's stuffy for my taste, but I mean, I'm that kind of person. I'm not gonna, the Queen's not inviting me to tea anytime soon, so it's just one of those things where like there's this energy level where people are like, I'm ready to go do parks, I'm ready to go to Disney, and it's almost like palpable, I guess, compared to somewhere where it's like, oh, have the bag boy like bring my luggage to my room kind of thing. So or whatever, and that's great too, like for people that are more low key and they're there to just kind of have more of a relaxing vacation kind of thing.
And I totally agree with that point, in that I think there are, and this is not to say there are tons of Disney fans and huge Disney Parks fans that stay at the Deluxes, and I'm not saying that they're all like that. They're not all stuffy. There's tons of passionate Disney fans that have the money to, and good for them that they can afford to stay there. That's nothing against those people, but I do think that with the value, there are people that have saved up years just to be able to afford this Disney vacation, and all they can afford is the value. And so they, it's like 3 years have paid off and we're finally here, and who cares that it's a value, because we're about to go to the Magic Kingdom.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this, was because I just felt the narrative that we were getting back was so negative, and that there are people that are, looking at their first vacation at Disney, they're staying at the All-Stars, and they're might be hearing some of this stuff going, oh, okay, I'm scared now. So I'm really glad that we have this, like I said, not just the comments we got, but the sheer tonnage of, and like, because it's only been a few days, when we're recording this, it's only been a few days since that show went up.
Oh yeah, that was like a week or two ago. No, last week.
It was literally
not even been a week.
It's been 5 days.
5 to 6 days. Yeah,
it's been 5 days. That went up on Thursday, right? Or Wednesday, Craig?
Wednesday.
It went up on Wednesday, so it's been 5 days since that show went up. And from the minute the show went up, I never know what order Craig is putting stuff up in. We come in, we record, and then Craig decides, okay, we're going to put this up, and we're going to put this up. Well, I knew exactly what show had just gone up, and I could have told you the moment it went live, because all of a sudden, because I think you were sitting in the office with me.
I was like, that show just went up, because I just got like 20 emails.
They were just coming, and then all weekend.
Yeah, all throughout the night.
Yeah, all hours of the day and night. So that, really people responded to that. And, we get email all the time on any number of issues, but I'm really hard pressed to remember a time that we got, with the exception of when Bob Varley passed away, I'm hard pressed to remember a time we received this much email on a single topic.
Right.
Even our best and worst cast member experiences was not with this veracity. And you'd think like those experiences that people would really want to share, but the passion is there for the All-Star resorts and for lots of reasons. So I thought we would absolutely take time and shed some light on that and share your thoughts. Thanks to everybody who wrote in, except the guy who said I was judging. No, I'm not thanking you. But everybody else, thank you so much for sharing your your thoughts on the All-Stars with us. And that will do it for this episode of the Best and Worst of Walt Disney World. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back with you again next week. Have a great week, everybody.